The Galactic Concordat had maintained peace for nearly 3,000 years. 847 species, united under a banner of cooperation and mutual prosperity, had turned the chaos of the ancient wars into a golden age of trade, exploration, and enlightenment. It was an achievement unparalleled in galactic history, a testament to what civilization could accomplish when beings of reason chose dialogue over violence. Humanity had joined this grand experiment 60 years prior, emerging from their small blue world with a mixture of wonder and wariness. The other species had accepted them, though not without reservation. Humans were useful, they bred quickly, adapted to harsh environments, and possessed an industrial capacity that made them valuable trading partners. Their military, while primitive by Concordat standards, was surprisingly effective. But they were crude, emotional, and dangerously unpredictable. The Concordat tolerated them, utilized them, but few truly respected them. The Venathi, by contrast, had been beloved members of the Concordat for over 400 years. They were an amphibious species, graceful and ethereal, with skin that shifted through pearlescent colors, and the ability to communicate through bioluminescent patterns that danced across their bodies like living poetry. Their homeworld, Venathar Prime, was a place of impossible beauty. Crystalline oceans that sang in the wind, floating gardens that drifted through skies of amber and violet, and the great ancestor pools where every Venathi returned at the end of their life to pass their memories to the next generation. The Venathi had given the galaxy art that moved souls across 1,000 different sensory spectrums. They had given music that could make a Thaxian warrior weep and a merged intelligence contemplate beauty. They were pacifists by nature and philosophy, believing that all conflict could be resolved through understanding and patience. They had no weapons, no military, no concept of violence beyond the theoretical. They had trusted the galaxy to protect them. That trust had been their doom. The Krell sovereignty had ruled vast swaths of Concordat space for millennia. They were an ancient species, reptilian in form, with scales like polished obsidian and eyes that calculated profit margins while others spoke of friendship. They sat on every major council, controlled the largest banks, and commanded respect through a mixture of economic pressure and quiet threats. When the Krell spoke in the Concordat council chambers, others listened. When Krell survey teams discovered that Venathar Prime sat atop the largest deposit of crystalline Tiberium ever recorded, their leadership made a decision with cold efficiency. The Venathi would need to relocate. The resources beneath their world were too valuable to leave untapped. They would be compensated fairly, of course. The Krell were not monsters. They would follow all proper procedures. The Venathi Council of Luminarchs had refused. How could they explain to species who changed worlds like humans changed clothes that Venathar Prime was not simply where they lived, but who they were? The ancestor pools contained 400 years of memories, the living history of their entire civilization. Their sacred sites were grown, not built, taking centuries to mature. Their very biology was tied to the specific chemistry of their oceans. Leaving was not relocation, it was cultural extinction. The Krell had anticipated this response. They brought the matter before the Concordat Council with carefully prepared evidence. Intelligence suggested the Venathi were harboring separatist cells. There were whispers of terrorism, of plots against Concordat unity. The evidence was fabricated, of course, but it was convincing. The Krell had centuries of experience in manipulating Concordat politics. The vote was never truly in doubt. Economic interests aligned. Favors were called in. Threats were made behind closed doors. When the Concordat Council voted to authorize peacekeeping operations on Venathar Prime, only 3 species voted against it. 2 were minor powers whose objections were noted and ignored. The third was humanity. Ambassador Dr. Amara Osei had stood before the council, her dark eyes blazing with barely controlled fury, and spoken words that would later be remembered. This is not peacekeeping. This is theft dressed in bureaucracy. The Venathi are guilty of nothing except living on land someone else wants. If this is what the Concordat has become, then perhaps we chose the wrong alliance. Her words changed nothing. Within 6 days, Krell warships blockaded Venathar Prime. What followed was not a peacekeeping operation. It was systematic slaughter. The Krell had not wanted negotiations. They had wanted the Venathi gone, quickly and permanently. Orbital bombardment began with clinical precision, targeting the ancestor pools first. The sacred sites where Venathi stored their cultural memory burned under plasma fire. Cities that had stood for centuries were reduced to melted glass. The Venathi, with no weapons and no understanding of warfare, could only flee. Approximately 50,000 Venathi escaped the initial assault. They crowded into cargo haulers, pleasure yachts, mining vessels, anything capable of breaking orbit. Families were torn apart in the chaos. Ancient luminarchs who had lived for 3 centuries died helping younglings onto ships. The crystalline oceans that had sung for millennia fell silent as the bombardment continued. The survivors jumped to hyperspace in 12 different directions, scattering across the frontier systems in hopes that dispersal meant survival. It did not. The Krell hunted them with methodical efficiency. They dispatched fast attack ships to track the refugee vessels, following ion trails and hyperspace signatures. The Concordat Council officially declared the fleeing Venathi as fugitive separatists, making it illegal for any member species to offer them shelter. Economic sanctions were threatened against anyone who interfered. One by one, the refugee ships were caught. The Venathi tried everything. They sought sanctuary at Thaxia Prime, home to a warrior culture that prided itself on honor. The Thaxians turned them away at gunpoint, unwilling to risk Krell economic retaliation. They broadcast distress calls to the merged intelligence, hoping that beings of pure logic would recognize the injustice. The merged intelligence did not respond. Their calculations showed no benefit in intervention. They even tried the Viren Empire, a species known for their elaborate codes of hospitality. The Viren captured the refugee ship and handed the Venathi over to Krell forces for processing. The galaxy had rules, after all. The Concordat Council had voted. Laws must be followed. 8 months into the hunt, fewer than 20,000 Venathi remained alive, scattered across a dozen ships that grew more desperate with each passing day. Their vessels were breaking down, their supplies exhausted. They sent distress calls that went unanswered, pleas for mercy that were ignored. They were dying slowly, scattered across the cold dark between stars, while the galaxy looked away. Captain Alina Reeves did not consider herself a hero. She was a 38-year-old career officer in the United Nations Space Navy, currently commanding the UNS Defiant Mercy, a frontier-class patrol frigate assigned to the ascend of human-controlled space. Her crew of 215 were good people doing a boring job, patrolling shipping lanes, investigating sensor anomalies, and filing reports that nobody at Earth Command ever read. She was running a routine sensor sweep of the Kepler asteroid field when her communications officer, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, picked up something unusual. "Captain, I've got a fragmented distress call. It's faint, probably a damaged transmitter. Audio only, and the translation matrix is struggling with it." Reeves set down her coffee. "Origin, approximately 40,000 kilometers into the field. The signal's bouncing off the asteroid, so I can't get an exact fix." "Play it." The bridge speakers crackled to life. Through heavy static came a voice speaking in a language that the ship's computers struggled to translate. But even through the interference, the desperation was clear. The voice broke multiple times as if the speaker was weeping. The translated words came through in fragments. "Anyone, please. Children dying. No food. 4 days since. Life support failing. Please." Reeves looked at her first officer, Commander David Park. He was already shaking his head. "Alina, we don't know who that is. Could be smugglers who got what they deserved. Could be a trap. Could be people who need help. We have orders to avoid contact with non-aligned vessels. Earth Command was very clear after the Concordat sanctions started. We're not supposed to get involved in plot and intercept course, Lieutenant Zhao," Reeves interrupted, addressing her navigation officer. "Full burn. I want us there in 30 minutes. Park moved closer, lowering his voice. "Captain, I need to strongly advise against this. We're already on thin ice with the Concordat. If we interfere with something we shouldn't, then we'll deal with it. but I'm not leaving someone to die because of politics. 28 minutes later, the Defiant Mercy came alongside a vessel that looked like it had barely survived a war. The ship's hull was pockmarked with micrometeorite impacts and what looked like weapons fire. Engines were cold, life support was minimal, and it was drifting without power. According to the ship's database, the design was Venathi, and according to Concordat bulletins, the Venathi were fugitives not to be aided. Reeves knew the stories, of course. Everyone did. The Venathi situation had been news 8 months ago, though the galaxy had mostly forgotten about it since. Reeves remembered feeling sick when she'd heard about the Concordat vote, remembered the anger in Ambassador Osei's voice during her speech. She also remembered Earth Command's orders. Do not interfere, maintain neutrality, avoid giving the Concordat any excuse to escalate sanctions. She ordered the boarding team to suit up anyway. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kowalski led the team across. What she found made her radio back with a voice that shook. "Captain, you need to see this. We've got approximately 3,000 people on a ship rated for 400. They're crammed into every compartment, every corridor. Life support is barely functioning. We've got bodies, Captain, children." Reeves closed her eyes. 3,000 on a dying ship with nowhere to go. She opened a channel to the Venathi vessel. "This is Captain Alina Reeves of the United Nations ship Defiant Mercy. We're here to help. Do you have anyone in command?" The response came after a long pause. The voice was weak, translated by their computer into standard English. "I am Luminarch Thulmora. We did not expect anyone to answer. The galaxy has made its position clear." "I'm not the galaxy. Can you tell me your situation?" Over the next 20 minutes, Thulmora explained. Her ship, the Star of Morning, had escaped Venathar Prime with 3,214 refugees. They had been running for 8 months, jumping from system to system, burning through their supplies while searching for any species that would take them in. Every door had closed. They were out of food. Water recycling had failed 3 days ago. Life support would last perhaps another 72 hours. They had come to this asteroid field to hide while they decided whether to surrender to the Krell or simply shut down life support and die together. "We have children," Thulmora said, and her voice broke. 600 younglings who have known nothing but fear and hunger. If you could just take them, please. Let our children live, the rest of us. We understand that we are already dead." Commander Park was shaking his head firmly. "Captain, we can't. Concordat made it illegal to aid Venathi refugees. If we take them aboard, we'll be in violation of half a dozen treaties. Earth Command will have us court-martialed." "Then they can court-martial me," Reeves said. "Zhao, bring us alongside. Webb, contact engineering and medical. Tell them to prepare for 3,000 refugees. Gut the cargo bays, the hangar deck, anywhere we can fit people. Move our supplies into corridors if we have to." "Captain," Park started. "David, I'm taking them aboard." "All of them. If you want to lodge a formal objection, it'll be noted in the log. But I'm not choosing which children get to live and which ones die in the dark." Park stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to the crew. "You heard the captain. Let's move." The transfer took 14 hours. The Defiant Mercy was designed to carry 215 crew members comfortably. By the time they finished, it held 3,214 Venathi plus the human crew. Every available space was packed. The cargo bays looked like refugee camps. The hangar deck, normally housing 6 fighters, had been converted into a makeshift hospital where Dr. Rachel Kim and her medical team worked frantically to treat malnutrition, dehydration, and injuries. The Venathi were unlike anything most of the human crew had seen. They ranged from barely knee-high younglings to ancient luminarchs whose bioluminescent patterns had faded with age. Their skin shifted through colors that expressed emotion. Fear showed as rapid pulses of dark blue, gratitude as soft golden waves. They moved with an otherworldly grace even in their weakened state. Reeves walked through the cargo bays that first night, seeing families huddled together, trying to comprehend what they had endured. She found Thulmora sitting with a group of younglings, telling them what seemed to be a story. The children's bioluminescence flickered in patterns that might have been laughter. "Luminarch," Reeves said quietly, "may I speak with you?" The elderly Venathi rose with surprising fluidity. Up close, Reeves could see the weight of centuries in her eyes. "Captain Reeves, we owe you our lives. The Covenant of Waters teaches that such debts can never be repaid, only honored through living well. I need to ask you something. Are there other ships, other survivors? Vilmora's colors dimmed to deep purple sorrow. Yes. When we scattered, there were 37 ships. Have had no contact with most of them for months. The Krell hunt us systematically. They track our hyperspace signatures, follow our ion trails. Some ships were caught immediately. Others, we do not know. Perhaps 15,000 more, if any, still live. Where would they run? What systems? Anywhere they thought might offer shelter. The frontier worlds, the independent stations, the border territories. Anywhere the Concordats reach might be weaker. She looked at Reeves with ancient eyes. Why do you ask? You have already risked so much. Reeves was quiet for a moment. Because I need to tell Earth Command where you are, and I think they'll want to know about the others. She sent the encrypted message to Earth that night. It was brief, factual, and career-ending. She explained the situation, the refugees now aboard her ship, and the estimated 15,000 more scattered across 12 systems. She requested permission to bring the Venathi to Earth and recommended the deployment of rescue missions for the remaining refugees. Then she pointed her ship toward Earth and engaged the hyperdrive, knowing she would likely face a court-martial when she arrived. The 3-week journey home gave Reeves time to know the people she had saved. The Venathi were gentle, curious, and despite everything they had endured, still capable of hope. They taught the human crew their language, not the words, but the light patterns that carried emotion and nuance beyond speech. They shared stories of Venathar Prime, of floating gardens and singing oceans, of a world that no longer existed. The younglings adapted quickest. Within days, they were playing games with the human crew, learning English with the rapid facility of childhood, and turning the ship's corridors into an impromptu school. Reeves often saw her crew members, hardened military personnel, sitting cross-legged on the deck, trying to copy bioluminescent patterns while Venathi children giggled at their attempts. Lieutenant Kowalski became particularly close with a young Venathi named Shal, who had lost her entire family during the escape from Venathar Prime. The girl was perhaps 7 in human years, with bright emerald colors that pulsed with an intensity that made her stand out. She followed Kowalski everywhere, asking endless questions about Earth humans and whether the sky was really blue. "Is it true your world has only one ocean?" Shal asked one day, her patterns showing fascination tinged with disbelief. "Well, it's divided into 5 parts, but they're all connected," Kowalski explained. "And it covers about 70% of our planet." "Only 70%? How do you breathe properly? How do you hear the water's song?" Kowalski smiled. "We manage. And maybe when we get to Earth, you can teach us to hear it." But the journey was not without tension. Many of the crew were worried about the consequences. They had violated Concordat law, directly defied orders from Earth Command, and potentially jeopardized humanity's standing in the galaxy. Commander Park voiced these concerns repeatedly, though he never once suggested they should have left the Venathi to die. "I support what we did," he told Reeves one night in her ready room. "But you understand what's waiting for us, right? Best case, you're court-martialed and dishonorably discharged. Worst case, Earth hands the Venathi back to the Concordat and we all face charges." "I know," Reeves said quietly. "But I couldn't leave them, David. I looked at those children and I saw my daughter." She paused. "Did I ever tell you I have a daughter, Emma? She's 15. I missed her last 3 birthdays because of my deployment schedule. I've been a terrible mother, always putting the job first. But when I saw those Venathi younglings dying on that ship, I thought, what kind of galaxy are we building for Emma? One where we look away when children die because saving them isn't politically convenient." Park nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right call. I just hope Earth Command agrees." When the Defiant Mercy emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, they were met by an escort of 6 warships. Reeves felt her stomach drop. That was not a welcoming committee. That was an arrest detail. "Incoming transmission," Webb announced. "It's Admiral Kavinsky himself." James Kavinsky had been head of Earth Defense Fleet for 12 years. He was a legend in the service, the man who had negotiated Earth's entry into the Concordat, who had built humanity's navy from a scattered collection of system defense ships into a force that could project power across a dozen sectors. was also known for his absolute intolerance of insubordination. "Put him through," Reeves said, standing at attention despite the fact that he couldn't see her. "Captain Reeves," Kavinsky's voice was gravelly and gave nothing away. "We received your message. I see you've brought guests." "Yes, sir. 3,214 Venathi refugees as detailed in my report. I take full responsibility for." "Captain, I'm going to stop you right there. We've had 3 weeks to discuss your situation. I'm not going to ask you to justify your actions over an open channel. Instead, I'm ordering you to proceed directly to Earth orbit, where you will be met by diplomatic and refugee services personnel. Your passengers will be processed and given temporary sanctuary while we determine next steps. As for you and your crew, we'll discuss your future once the Venathi are safely settled." "Understood," Reeves blinked. That was not what she had expected. "Sir, to confirm, we're not being arrested." "Oh, there are a lot of people who want to arrest you, Captain, but I'm not one of them." Kavinsky out. What Reeves did not know was that her message had triggered 3 weeks of intense debate within Earth's government. The Secretary General, the Security Council, the Diplomatic Corps, everyone had an opinion on what to do about the Venathi situation. One faction argued for returning the refugees to Concordat custody. Earth could not afford further sanctions. Trade was already suffering. The Concordat had made its position clear. Protecting fugitives would only make things worse. Another faction argued for quiet resettlement on a frontier colony. Take the Venathi somewhere remote, somewhere the Concordat wouldn't look. Provide them sanctuary but keep it off the books. Admiral Kavinsky and Ambassador Osei had argued for a third option. Go public. Make this a line in the sand. Tell the galaxy that Earth would offer sanctuary to all Venathi refugees and dare the Concordat to do something about it. "They'll declare us in violation of treaty," the Secretary General had protested. "The economic consequences alone could be devastating." "The economic consequences of having no principles are worse," Osei had countered. "We joined the Concordat believing it represented the best of galactic civilization. We were wrong. The Concordat is a bureaucracy that enabled genocide because it was economically convenient. If we go along with this, if we hand over refugees to keep our trade flowing, then what are we? What kind of humanity are we showing the galaxy?" The debate had raged for days. In the end, the Security Council voted 7-5 to support Kavinsky's proposal. Earth would grant sanctuary to the Venathi. Moreover, Earth would launch a rescue operation to find and retrieve every remaining refugee ship. The decision was transmitted to the Concordat Council with deliberate timing, 6 hours before the defiant Mercy arrived at Earth. Ambassador Osei delivered the message personally, standing before the assembled representatives with a calm that masked her fury. "The United Nations of Earth hereby grants political asylum to all Venathi refugees under Article 14 of the Universal Rights Convention. Furthermore, we are deploying humanitarian vessels to locate and rescue remaining Venathi survivors. We invite the Concordat to join these efforts. However, make no mistake, we will proceed with or without your approval." The Krell representative, a massive reptilian named Vexther, rose from his seat. His voice carried the weight of centuries of assumed authority. "The Concordat Council has ruled on this matter. The Venathi are fugitive separatists. By harboring them, Earth places itself in violation of treaty. We demand immediate compliance." "Demand all you want," Osei replied. "Our answer is no. You risk your standing in the Concordat. You risk economic sanctions that will cripple your colonies. You risk military action. For what? A few thousand refugees of a dying species." Osei leaned forward. "We risk those things for the same reason we've always done difficult things, because it's right. The Venathi asked the galaxy for mercy and received only cruelty. They came to humanity as strangers and we will welcome them as friends. And if you want them, Vexther, you'll have to go through us." The session had dissolved into chaos after that, but Earth's position was clear. When the Venathi refugees disembarked from the defiant Mercy, they were met not by guards but by aid workers, doctors, and volunteers. Processing centers had been set up in the orbital stations. Supplies were abundant. For the first time in 8 months, the refugees had access to clean water, real food, and safety. Reeves stood on the hangar deck, watching the last of the Venathi leave her ship. Vilmora approached her, accompanied by Shal, who was holding Kowalski's hand. "Captain Reeves," the Luminarch said, her colors showing deep gratitude. "You showed us that the galaxy still contains kindness. We will remember this. Our younglings will tell stories of the humans who answered when no one else would." "I just did what anyone should have done," Reeves said uncomfortably. "No," Vilmora said firmly. "You did what almost no one did. There is a difference." Admiral Kavinsky summoned Reeves to his office the next day. She expected a reprimand at minimum. Instead, she found Kavinsky sitting with Ambassador Osei. "Captain," Kavinsky said without preamble, "you put me in a difficult position. You violated orders, defied Concordat law, and made a unilateral decision that affected Earth's foreign policy." "Yes, sir, I understand. I'm promoting you to Commodore and giving you command of Operation Homelight." Reeves stared. "Sir, we're deploying 200 ships, half our merchant marine and 40% of our military fleet, to find every remaining Venathi refugee. You're going to lead it. You've got 3 months to find 15,000 people scattered across 12 systems while avoiding Krell hunters and not starting a war. Think you can handle it?" Reeves felt something that might have been hope. "Yes, sir." "Good, because Ambassador Osei here needs to go explain to the Concordat why we're doing this, and I need to explain to Earth's government why we're risking war. But you, Commodore, you just need to bring those people home." Operation Homelight launched 6 days later. It was the largest humanitarian mission in human history, combining military precision with civilian determination. 200 ships spread across 12 star systems, following fragmentary leads, tracking old hyperspace signatures, and searching every asteroid field, nebula, and backwater station where desperate refugees might have fled. It was dangerous work. The Krell had hunters throughout the frontier. Several human ships were intercepted, leading to tense standoffs where neither side wanted to fire the first shot, but neither would back down. Humanity made its position clear through actions rather than words. They would defend the refugees with lethal force if necessary. Commodore Reeves personally led the most dangerous missions. She had gained a reputation among the rescue crews as someone who would not abandon anyone. When intelligence suggested a Venathi ship was hiding in the Carina Nebula, a region notorious for sensor interference and navigation hazards, Reeves took her ship in personally, spending 4 days searching through particle storms before finding a vessel with 200 survivors barely clinging to life. The rescue that became famous across Earth, though, was the standoff at Kepler. Reeves received intelligence that a Venathi ship called the Eternal Current was being pursued by 3 Krell destroyers. The refugee vessel was carrying 900 survivors and had a failing hyperdrive. They would be caught within hours. Reeves calculated that the Defiant Mercy could intercept first, but barely. She would reach the refugee ship perhaps 30 minutes before the Krell. It would not be enough time to evacuate 900 people. "So we don't evacuate them," Reeves told her crew. "We put ourselves between the refugees and the Krell, and we see if they're willing to start a war today." They arrived with 22 minutes to spare. Reeves positioned her ship directly between the Eternal Current and the approaching Krell vessels. She opened a channel. "This is Commodore Elena Reeves of the United Nations ship Defiant Mercy. The vessel behind me is under Earth's protection. If you want them, you'll have to go through us." The Krell commander responded with cold fury. "You are in violation of Concordat law. Move aside or be fired upon." "No. We are authorized to use lethal force against fugitives and those who harbor them." "Then use it. But understand that if you fire on the ship, you fire on Earth, and Earth will respond." For 6 hours, the two forces stared each other down. Reeves kept her weapons powered but not locked. The Krell destroyers circled, looking for an opening, but Reeves matched every maneuver, maintaining her position between them and the refugee ship. Behind her, engineers worked frantically to repair the Eternal Current's hyperdrive. On Earth, billions watched the standoff on live feeds. The Security Council held an emergency session. Admiral Kavinsky ordered 20 ships to begin a high-speed burn toward Kepler, knowing they would arrive far too late if shooting started. The Krell commander sent increasingly aggressive messages. Reeves responded to each one with the same word: "No." Finally, after 6 hours and 14 minutes, the Krell destroyers withdrew. They had calculated the odds and found them unacceptable. Destroying one human ship was militarily simple, but doing so would mean open war with humanity, and despite their advantages, the Krell were not ready for that conflict. The Eternal Current's hyperdrive came online 30 minutes later. Reeves escorted them personally back to Earth, arriving to a hero's welcome that made her intensely uncomfortable. Over 3 months, humanity's rescue fleet found and retrieved 14,847 Venathi refugees. Combined with the initial 3,000 from the Star of Morning, nearly 18,000 survivors made it to Earth. It was not all of them. Some ships were never found, lost to the void or captured before humanity could reach them. But it was far more than anyone had thought possible. The Venathi were settled across Earth, with concentrations in coastal and island regions where their amphibious nature suited the environment. The largest settlement was established in the Pacific, on a series of islands that the Venathi renamed New Venathar. Others scattered to coastal cities worldwide: Vancouver, Sydney, Mumbai, Lagos, Rio de Janeiro. The integration was not without challenges. The Venathi were traumatized, displaced, and trying to rebuild their culture from fragments. Earth was strange to them. Different gravity, different chemistry, different everything. Many humans were welcoming, but others resented the economic cost of supporting nearly 18,000 refugees when Earth's own people faced hardships. But something remarkable began to happen. The Venathi, despite their losses, began to share their gifts with humanity. They taught bioluminescent art, creating displays of light and color that transformed human cities into living galleries. They shared their music, which humans could only partially perceive but found hauntingly beautiful. They introduced advanced biotechnology that revolutionized human medicine, techniques for tissue regeneration and genetic therapy that were centuries ahead of human science. More than that, though, they showed gratitude. The Venathi did not take Earth's protection for granted. They threw themselves into integration, learning human languages and customs, contributing to their new communities, and teaching their younglings to honor the species that had saved them when the rest of the galaxy turned away. Shao, the young Venathi who had befriended Lieutenant Kowalski, became something of a symbol for integration. She learned English fluently within months, attended human schools, and gave an interview to a news network where she spoke about her journey with the clarity and emotion that only children possess. "The Krell took our home," she said, her bioluminescence pulsing with remembered pain. "The Concordat said we had to die because we were inconvenient, but humans said no. Captain Reeves found us in the dark and brought us to light. Now Earth is our home and humans are our pod. We will never forget." The interview was watched by billions and changed many minds about the refugees. But Earth's protection of the Venathi came at a cost. The Concordat imposed severe economic sanctions. Trade with dozens of species was cut off. Earth's colonies faced supply shortages. Several species that had been friendly with humanity issued formal condemnations. There was real suffering, and many in Earth's government questioned whether saving one species had been worth harming their own. The Krell sovereignty, meanwhile, was not content to let the matter rest. They issued an official ultimatum through the Concordat Council. Earth had 30 days to surrender all Venathi refugees for processing or face corrective military action. To emphasize their seriousness, they assembled a battle fleet of 50 warships and positioned them near the border of human space. The Concordat Council was paralyzed. Some species privately supported Earth's position but feared Krell economic and military retaliation. Others genuinely believed humanity was becoming dangerously rebellious and needed to be brought to heel. The galaxy watched and waited to see if the 3,000-year peace would finally break. On Earth, the debate was anguished. Surrender the Venathi and avoid war, or stand firm and risk everything humanity had built in space. The Security Council was deadlocked. Public opinion was divided. Even the military leadership was split on whether Earth could win a war against the Krell. Admiral Kavinsky advocated for resistance. "If we surrender them now, we tell the galaxy that humans have no principles, that our word means nothing. that will sacrifice anyone to save ourselves. I say we defend our position. Others disagreed violently. We're talking about war with the most powerful military in the Concordat. We could lose everything: our colonies, our trade, our position in galactic society. For what? For refugees we've known less than a year. Ambassador Osei pointed out a different calculation. The question isn't whether we can afford to protect the Venathi, it's whether we can afford not to. The galaxy is watching to see what humanity truly is. Are we a species of principle or expedience? That answer will define our future for centuries. Earth began preparing for war regardless of the political debate. Defense platforms came online around Earth and all major colonies. The fleet was recalled and positioned in defensive formations. Admiral Kavinsky called up reserves and began converting civilian ships for military support roles. If the Krell wanted a fight, humanity would give them one. On the 29th day of the ultimatum, something unexpected happened. 17 species, minor members of the Concordat, none individually powerful but collectively significant, issued a joint statement supporting Earth's position. They had been watching quietly, and humanity's willingness to risk everything for refugees had moved them in ways that political speeches never could. The statement was brief but powerful. The Concordat was founded on principles of mutual aid and protection of the vulnerable. Earth has upheld these principles while we remained silent. We stand with humanity and the Venathi. If the Krell attacks Earth, they attack us all. It was not a military alliance. None of these species could match Krell power, but it was a political earthquake. Suddenly, attacking Earth meant attacking multiple Concordat members. The political fallout would be catastrophic. More critically, 3 major species announced they would remain neutral in any conflict. They did not endorse Earth's actions, but neither would they support Krell military intervention. The careful political coalition the Krell had built began to crumble. Then, on the morning of the 30th day, everything changed. An anonymous package was delivered to every member of the Concordat Council simultaneously. It contained recordings, communications, and financial records proving that the Krell had fabricated the evidence against the Venathi. The terrorist plots, the separatist cells, all of it had been manufactured. The Krell had orchestrated a genocide for resources and profit, and the Concordat had been complicit through willful ignorance. The source of the leak was never confirmed, though many suspected elements within the Concordat bureaucracy who had been horrified by the Venathi situation but lacked the courage to speak out. Now the truth was undeniable. The Concordat Council convened an emergency session. The Krell representatives tried to deflect, to minimize, to justify, but the evidence was overwhelming. Species that had supported the Krell began to distance themselves. The political landscape shifted within hours. Still, the Krell fleet advanced. They had committed too much to back down without something to show for it. Their honor demanded action. They entered Earth's star system with 50 warships in formation, a display of force meant to cow humanity into submission. Admiral Kavinsky met them with Earth's entire defensive fleet, 173 military vessels, ranging from massive dreadnoughts to nimble frigates. It was impressive by human standards, but the Krell had superior technology, better shields, and more firepower. In a straight fight, humanity would lose. But Kavinsky was not planning a straight fight. From the bridge of the UNS Indomitable, Earth's flagship, he opened a channel that broadcast across every frequency, ensuring that not just the Krell but the entire galaxy could hear his words. This is Admiral James Kavinsky of the United Nations Defense Fleet. To the Krell forces currently in our star system, you have come here demanding we surrender innocent refugees to be processed by the species that murdered their world. You have come here believing that superior numbers and technology will force us to abandon our principles. You have miscalculated. He paused, letting the silence stretch. The Venathi asked the galaxy for mercy and received only cruelty. They came to humanity as strangers and we welcomed them as friends. You claim they are fugitives. We say they are survivors of genocide and Earth will not hand them over to their executioners. If you want them, you will have to destroy us. And I promise you this, we will make you pay for every mile of space, every moment of battle, every drop of human blood. We may not win, but you will remember the cost. The Krell commander, a scarred veteran named Krellvex who had fought in wars before humanity even discovered fire, responded with cold confidence. You threaten us with determination, as if we can defeat weapons. We have 50 ships to your 173, but our vessels are superior in every metric. You will be destroyed within hours, and then we will land forces on your world and take what we came for. Surrender now and we may show mercy to your civilians. No, Kavinsky said simply. The fleet positions shifted. Weapons powered up. For a moment, it seemed that 3,000 years of galactic peace would end in the space above Earth. Then something else appeared on sensors. Ships emerging from hyperspace behind Earth's defensive line. Not human ships. These were dozens of vessels from 17 different species, the ones who had issued the joint statement supporting Earth. Their fleet was not large, perhaps 30 ships in total, but they positioned themselves alongside humanity's formation in a clear statement of solidarity. The transmission came from the lead vessel, a Threnody cruiser. This is Captain Velma's of the Venathi Concordats. We stand with Earth. If you attack them, you attack us all. Similar declarations came from the other species. None of them individually were powerful enough to matter, but together they represented a coalition that the Krell could not dismiss. Attacking them meant attacking multiple Concordat members simultaneously. The political consequences would be devastating, potentially fracturing the Concordat itself. Krellvex found himself in an impossible situation. He had come here expecting to face only humanity, a species he could defeat and punish with minimal consequences. Instead, he faced a coalition that would turn this from a police action into a civil war. And behind it all, the leaked evidence of Krell's crimes was spreading throughout the Concordat. Public opinion was turning against them with stunning speed. He calculated his options with the cold logic his species was known for. He could attack and probably win militarily. But the cost would be severe. Humanity would fight desperately, and even in defeat would inflict significant casualties. And when the battle ended, the Krell would face condemnation from a significant portion of the Concordat, potential economic sanctions, and the permanent loss of moral authority that had underpinned their power. Or he could withdraw, claim the situation required further diplomatic resolution, and preserve his fleet while the political situation was reassessed. After 18 hours of standoff, during which neither side moved and the tension threatened to snap into violence at any moment, Krellvex made his decision. The Krell fleet withdrew from Earth's system. The galaxy watched as the most powerful military force in the Concordat retreated without firing a shot, turned back by the determination of one species and the solidarity of others who had found courage in humanity's example. The Concordat Council convened an emergency session that lasted for 6 days. The evidence of Krell's fabrications could not be ignored or dismissed. Species that had supported the Venathi relocation began calling for investigations. The political coalition that had enabled the genocide fell apart as everyone sought to distance themselves from the Krell's actions. In the end, the Council issued a formal condemnation of the Krell sovereignty's actions regarding Venathar Prime. The Venathi were officially recognized as a persecuted people, and Earth's protection of them was deemed lawful under Concordat humanitarian principles. The Krell were forced to pay massive reparations to a Concordat humanitarian fund, though not to the Venathi directly. The refugees wanted nothing from the species that had destroyed their world. The economic sanctions against Earth were lifted. Trade resumed, though relationships remained strained with species that had supported the Krell. More significantly, the 17 species that had stood with Earth formed a loose coalition called the Mutual Defense Initiative, agreeing to support each other against future injustices. It was not a formal alliance, but it represented a shift in galactic politics, smaller species learning that unity gave them power they lacked individually. For the Venathi, the recognition came too late to restore what they had lost. Venathar Prime remained a gutted wasteland, strip-mined of its resources and left barren. The ancestor pools were destroyed, 400 years of living memory lost forever. They could never go home, but they had found a new home. Over the following year, the Venathi integrated more fully into Earth's societies. New Venathar grew from a refugee camp into a thriving city, its architecture a fusion of Venathi organic design and human engineering. Bioluminescent displays became common in human cities, turning night into a canvas of living light. Venathi medical technology saved countless human lives. Cultural exchange programs flourished. More importantly, the relationship became truly reciprocal. The Venathi were not just refugees being sheltered, they were partners contributing to their adopted world. Young Venathi joined human schools and universities. Venathi scientists worked alongside human researchers. Interspecies friendships formed naturally, particularly among the younger generations who had known nothing but integration. Commodore Reeves was promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's humanitarian response fleet, a permanent force dedicated to protecting refugees and responding to crises. She never forgot the decision she had made in that asteroid field, the choice to put compassion before politics. It had nearly cost her everything, but it had also revealed something important about humanity, that they were capable of being better than the galaxy expected. 5 years after the rescue of the Star of Morning, Admiral Elena Reeves stood on a beach in New Venathar. The city had grown beautiful, its buildings rising like coral formations along the coast, glowing softly with bioluminescent light as evening fell. Human and Venathi children played together in the surf, their laughter carrying on the ocean breeze. Luminarch Thulmora stood beside her, now visibly aged but still vibrant. Her colors pulsed with contentment, a pattern Reeves had learned meant peace and belonging. "You gave us more than shelter," Thulmora said, her bioluminescence glowing with deep emotion. "You gave us hope that the galaxy could be better. That compassion was not a weakness but a strength." Reeves watched the children playing, seeing Shao, now 12 and tall for her age, teaching a group of human kids how to create light patterns in the water. Lieutenant Commander Kowalski's daughter was among them, the two girls as close as sisters despite being different species. "You gave us something too," Reeves replied quietly. "You reminded us why we went to the stars in the first place, not for resources or territory or power, but to find others like us, to help each other survive in the dark." Thulmora's colors shifted to gold, gratitude, and joy mixed together. The Venathi have a saying, "The pod that swims together survives the deep." For millennia, we thought our pod was only our species. We were wrong. A pod can include anyone willing to swim together. Out in the harbor, a new ship was being christened, a joint human-Venathi vessel designed for deep space exploration. It carried crew from both species, heading out to chart systems beyond the Concordat's borders. Other similar ventures were being planned. The partnership that had begun with desperate rescue was growing into something bigger. Across the galaxy, the story of Earth's defense of the Venathi had become legend. 17 species had found their courage, but dozens more had begun questioning the assumptions that governed galactic politics. The Concordat still stood, but it had been changed. There was now an understanding that laws and treaties meant nothing if they enabled atrocity, that power without principle was tyranny, and that sometimes the smallest acts of defiance could reshape the galaxy. Humanity's reputation had changed as well. They were no longer just the useful deathworlders from a crude, industrial planet. They were the species that had stood up when others looked away, that had risked everything for strangers, that had shown the galaxy what it meant to have principles worth fighting for. And in quiet moments, in refugee camps across the Concordat where other species faced persecution and displacement, a rumor spread. A hope whispered in the dark, that if the worst came, if the galaxy abandoned them, there was one place that might answer their distress call. One species that still believed rescue was worth the cost. The hunt was over. The Venathi had found their home, and humanity had discovered something about itself that would define its role in the galaxy for generations to come, that they would always be the ones who answered when others needed help, who stood between the vulnerable and those who would harm them, who believed that saving one species, one ship, one child was worth any risk. Because in the end, that was what separated civilization from barbarism. Not technology or power or ancient traditions, but the simple choice to help when helping was hard. To say no to injustice even when saying yes was easier. To be the voice that answered in the dark. Earth had answered, and the galaxy would never forget.